So hi everyone, I'm Léa Lacroix and I will be your host for this opening session of the Data Reuse Days. I'm very happy to have you all here. So we have some people joining in the interactive Jitsi room, and we should also be live on YouTube now. So I wanted to mention two things before we start. For the people on Jitsi, just remember that you are recorded right now. So I would suggest you keep your microphone and camera muted. This is the case by default, unless you want to speak, of course, maybe later during the Q&A. But if you do so, just be aware that you're going to be recorded and appear on the live stream. The Jitsi chat, however, is not logged. And for people who are joining us on YouTube, and you may wonder, oh, but actually I would love to be in the room and interact directly with the participants and the speaker, this is possible. The only thing you need to do is to sign up for the event on the wiki page of the event. You will see a register button. That's pretty straightforward. And once you have done that, you will have the access to the Jitsi room, and you can join us here. I recommend you do it if you have the possibility, because it's going to be even more fun joining the event in an interactive mode. So today we're going to have two sessions. We're going to have the opening that we're going to start just now, and then we're going to have another session that is going to be actually pretty interactive. So if you want to ask some questions about how to reuse Wikidata's data, it will be better to be in the Jitsi room. But for now, let's get started with the Data Reuse Days. I'm here with several colleagues from Wikimedia Deutschland that are going to be hosting this event over the next days. And this is what we're going to do today during the opening. We're going to have a look at who's in the room. I'm going to introduce to you the event itself and how to attend. We're also going to have a look at the program. Then we will have a presentation of a research that's been done around Wikidata's data access methods before we move on to the next session. So what we can do to start and to kind of get to know each other is that for people who are in the Jitsi room, you can maybe write a message in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. If this is the first time for you at a Wikidata event, online or on site, and if there's anything that you're particularly interested in related to the Data Reuse Days, you can also let us know. And in the meantime, we're going to have a very quick presentation of our facilitators. So I already introduced myself. I'm Leah, and I'm taking care of all kinds of things related to events in the Wikimedia movement and for Wikidata in general. Lydia, Ifra, Alan, if you're around, do you want to say hi quickly?
Hi, I'm Lydia, the portfolio lead for Wikidata, and very excited to have you all here. Ifra.
Hello, I'm Ifra, and I'm the product manager for the Wikibase product platform team. We're the team that made the REST API, and I'm very excited to be here and have fun discussions. I'm going to hand over to Alan, if he's around.
I'm not sure Alan's there actually, but that's fine. He will be with us later during the event. All right, and I see in the chat that we have, as usual, people joining us from all kind of areas of the world, which is pretty amazing. While you keep introducing yourself, if you want, we are gonna move forward to what is this event and how do we actually join and participate. Okay, So the Data Reuse Days is an event that focuses on people and organizations that reuse Wikidata's data through applications, tools, and we're also gonna dive a little bit into the technical infrastructure, like how do we actually use Wikidata as a source of data for our tools. It's going to take place during several days in a row over 2 weeks from today until the 27th. And we decided on a format that has 2 hours of sessions per day to give you some time to also do something else, maybe watch the replay of the previous sessions if you didn't have time to do so, or just let it sink what you just learned during the previous sessions. Most of it take place live. We broadcast it to YouTube, and it's also immediately recorded, so you will be able to watch the sessions at your own pace. And the event is open to everyone who's interested in learning more about reusing Wikidata's data. It is not necessary to have a technical background to participate. You will notice that some sessions are quite technical, but in any case, we will make sure that it is enjoyable to watch for everyone. So, there are several ways to join the event that you can pick on every day, basically. One of them, and the one we recommend the most, I would say, is to join the Jitsi room, because that's the most interactive option. You would be in a video call directly with the speakers, directly with the other participants. So you could ask your questions directly in the chat or by unmuting your microphone during the Q&A sessions. And participate actively to the discussion. So if you're not in the GT room yet, you can have access to the link after you register for the event on the wiki page. And if you're already in the room, great. The link is going to remain the same during the whole event, so you can just save it and come back to it every day. If you cannot or do not want to use Jitsi, you can also watch the live stream directly on YouTube. All the links are on the program of the event. There is a different link every day, but the link of the live stream is also going to be the same as the link to watch the sessions in replay later on. They're going to be available directly on YouTube after the sessions. So you can just catch up with the session whenever you have time for it. And the videos are also going to be uploaded to Wikimedia Commons a few days or weeks after the event. So the event and all the channels that we're going to use are covered by the technical code of conduct for the Wikimedia projects. I invite you to go and have a look, and in general to make sure that you contribute to a positive atmosphere at the event and that interactions that are safe for everyone. And if you have any questions or any issues during the event, you can reach out to me either by email or on Telegram. Now, a few more links that may be useful to you. You can get them from the screen right now, but if you're on Jitsi, we're also pasting them into the chat. So the main event page is basically the place where you will find all the useful information that you need. You will, for example, find the sessions section in which you have the program of the entire event and also the links to the YouTube live stream, for example. That's also where, if you're not signed up yet, you can sign up. Sign up and it's free, and it basically will allow you to have access to the GT room if you're not there yet. You can also have a look at the list of attendees that is also provided by this signing up feature. And we have a category on Wikimedia Commons on which you will find later on the videos and also the slides that will be shared by the speakers. Now, for people who are on Jitsi, I will do a very quick tour of the tool if you don't know it yet. It's your usual video call tool with like the mute microphone button and the video button. By default, when you're joining the room, you're all muted, so you don't need to worry about that. But if you ever want to unmute, for example, during the Q&A session, you can freely do so. Um, you also have a button that is raising your hand that can be useful for the Q&A. It's a little bit confusing because you also have the reactions that are available by clicking on the little arrow next to the raise your hand. So if you confuse one for the other at some point during the event, no worries, it happens all the time. And of course, we're always at risk of some troubles, especially if you're many people in the room. If you notice any issue, my first suggestion would be to first refresh the page. If it doesn't work, maybe switch browser to see if it works better. And in doubt, maybe just try to reboot completely. But I hope you will not arrive to that level. And finally, and especially for people who join from mobile, it's good to know that there is also a Jitsi app that works pretty well. And instead of a link, you need to give it simply the title of the meeting room, which is basically the second part of the Jitsi link. So if something doesn't work on a browser, maybe you can also try the app. We also have spaces for discussions during and after the event. We have the event talk page on Wiki, which you can use, for example, if you have issues or questions about the event in general. If you're joining us on Jitsi, there is the chat that you can use, but keep in mind that it's not logged, so whatever you're typing in there is not going to be saved and recorded after the session, but it's great to discuss with the participants in real time. For the rest, we're also going to use the Wikidata Telegram group, the main Wikidata Telegram group. If you're not there yet, I suggest you join because it's a great way to get in touch with the international Wikidata community. You can also join the other community channels. We have the newsletter, we have the mailing list. You will find all of this on our communication channels contact page. And finally, if you want to share your participation to the event or highlights of the event on your favorite social media platform, you can use the hashtag Data Reuse Days 2025. Now, let's talk a little bit about documentation. So, as I was mentioning before, most sessions are going to be recorded, and because we're live streaming on YouTube, they will be available directly after the session on the same link as the live stream link. And we will upload the videos to Wikimedia Commons a little bit after the event. Give us some time to process all of these videos. And we will encourage all speakers to also share their slides on Wikimedia Commons, so you can also access the presentations. We encourage you to watch the videos at your own pace, and also to share them with your local communities, for example. If you see something that can be interesting for others, all the videos will be, of course, free to access. And once the videos are on Wikimedia Commons, you could also help with providing captions, starting with English, which is going to be the main language of our event, and also then translations in other languages. If you're up to it, that would be really amazing. And because everything is recorded, we didn't plan any particular note taking, although you could, of course, decide to take some notes for yourself. So I think I'm done now with the general presentation of how the event is going to work. Now let's have a look at the program. So you can find the program and the links, as I was saying, from the main event page. So we're going to go through it very briefly, but I wanted to get you excited about what's coming, because we really have some great content and interesting speakers coming up in the upcoming 2 weeks. So for today, after the opening session and the presentation of the results of the research on data access methods, as I was telling you, we're going to have an interactive session dedicated to using Wikidata's data. And this session is basically the perfect place to come and ask questions if you've been trying to reuse Wikidata's data, but you didn't manage, or you encounter an issue. You can join in the community, or our facilitators will try and answer and solve your problem. Tomorrow, we are going to have again 2 hours of sessions. Tomorrow is really a great day if you're new to using Wikidata's data, because during the first hour, we're going to have an overview on all the methods and tools that you could use to reuse Wikidata's data. And during the second hour, we're going to have a real showcase of building an application using Wikidata's data from scratch using a tool named Snowman. So I think it's really interesting for you if you are considering doing it but never tried it yourself. On February 20th, that's going to be the day dedicated to APIs. So we're going to have an introduction to the fairly new Wikibase REST API, and we're going to have a demo on how to build a simple app with this REST API. So if you've been interested in trying it, that's the day for you. On Friday, February 21st, we're going to have our first application showcase. This is a session to not miss, because in just 1 hour and a half, you're going to have an overview of plenty of different projects that we use Wikidata's data. And it's going to give you plenty of insight and inspiration on what is possible to do. That will be followed by another discussion about APIs, but this time about the Action API. And we will conclude with something that is now a tradition in our online events, which is playing Wikidata games together. This session is not going to be live streamed on YouTube, so you will have to join the Jitsi room in order to participate. On Saturday, Jan and Albin are going to run one of their now famous Wikidata live editing session on the topic of reusing Wikidata. Then we will start again on Monday with our AI and machine learning day. So don't miss this one, because we're going to discuss how Wikimedia Deutschland has been developing projects to help to make it easier to explore Wikidata with these models. And we're going to keep talking about model context protocol for Wikidata later on. On February 25th, we're going to have a discussion about the Wikidata query service. I'm pretty sure many of you are going to be interested in this one. We're going to try to give you an update about everything that's been happening around the query service, but also discuss what are the alternatives that people could use to query and use Wikidata's data. Then we will have 2 other sessions that present some use cases on reusing Wikidata's data. Wikidata to provide background information to application users, and Wikiflix. After that, on February 26th, we're going to have our second application showcase with, again, some lightning talks of various projects presenting how they reuse Wikidata's data in various fields, followed by a presentation of Scribe that maybe you heard before in a previous event, which is the language learning keyboard that is using Wikidata Lexeme to power its engine. And finally, on February 27th, we're going to have some more sessions. We're going to talk about libraries. We're going to talk about authority files. That's going to be our Nerdy Librarians Day. And after that, that's already going to be the moment where we conclude the event with a very short closing session and then another round of Wikidata games. And finally, on Friday the 28th, if you missed something and you want to rewatch some videos together with other people, we're going to have this Jitsi room open during 2 slots, and you could just join and discuss with the other people who are there and basically watch 1 or 2 videos together. So again, feel free to browse the full program on the event page, and in there you will find all the links to access the YouTube videos. All right, I'm gonna stop now just to ask if anyone has question about the event so far. If there's anything that I presented that was not clear, feel free to write in the chat, for example, if you have questions, and I will answer them as good as I can. Take your time. You can also write in the GT chat and I will answer you on the fly. And for now, we will move on to the second part of our opening session, which is Wikidata's data access methods. I will stop sharing my screen to let Lydia do it. Meanwhile, I will answer one question that was asked in the chat. Did we plan for any interpretation during the event? No, unfortunately, this event is English only. But as I was saying, because all the videos are going to be uploaded to Wikimedia Commons, there will be the possibility for community-driven subtitles. And I hope that can help make the content a little bit more international. All right, Lydia, whenever you're ready.
All right. We're going to talk now a bit about research that Ifra, Daria, and I have done with support of others over the last few months around the data access methods, how people are getting to Wikidata's data. So first of all, what was the problem we were trying to get around? Well, Wikidata has a lot of data, and that data is there to be used, but there are so many more applications, services, and so on that people can build, but don't yet. And we want to help people make more use of our data that we have. In addition, there are many ways how people get to Wikidata's data. Sometimes this is confusing. And a lot of people are, for example, using the query service when it's not necessarily necessary, which leads to overloading one of the services. And we wanted to figure out how can we help people find the right piece of infrastructure for them. So with that as the background, what did we actually do? We looked at a lot of queries that were sent to the query service and tried to understand, okay, what are they actually looking for with that query? What's going on there? Try to classify that. We looked at a lot of metrics for existing APIs, specifically the REST API and the Action API. We ran a survey with around 70 responses, and we did interviews to more in-depth understand, okay, what do developers need and want from Wikidata? And we're now here to talk a bit about what did we find out. So there were a lot of insights. Some of them are more general and some of them around more specific data access methods. If I will later speak about the more specific stuff, I will cover the general insights that we got from the survey, the interviews, the analysis. First of all, developers are using a combination of all the different ways you can get to Wikidata's data. There will be a session tomorrow where I explain all of them and when they're good for their specific use cases. And most people use a combination of the different access methods. They can't just use one to get what they want. And a lot of the people we talk to use the query service, among other reasons, because the other methods are maybe suitable for what they want to do, but they don't let them do it in one request, or it's a bit more cumbersome because that method doesn't give them the exact response they want. They would have to do some post-processing and so on. And with the query service, it's just more powerful and they can be more specific about which data they want and how they want it to look like. One thing that we also noticed was that we have a bunch of data access methods, some of them more powerful than others, and so on. And we cover well the direct access to a specific item, like you want all the data about a specific famous person, for example, with the Action API and the REST API. And we cover well the use case of querying. So if you are interested in exploiting all the connections in the graph, in the knowledge graph that we have with the Wikidata query service, and you can do large-scale analysis with the dumps, but there's a bit missing there, and often we believe we can improve that situation by just adding a little bit more to existing APIs, making them better, but maybe also in the future add additional new APIs if they're really needed. So another key point that came out of the research was that documentation and the discoverability of the documentation is still a problem. We have a fantastic new developer portal, but it is not very findable yet, and we will tackle that. Or for example, the examples that are available in the query service are maybe not showing all the different things you can do with the query service in a way that's accessible to people. And Ifra just posted a link. Thank you, Ifra. Then some other highlights that we found was a lot of times the people we talked to in the interviews didn't think about what they do as accessing data from Wikimedia. So for example, a combination of Wikidata's data plus Wikipedia's content, or content from Wikisource or Wikimedia Commons. But it did come up. So it was much more about, okay, just using Wikidata's data, or at least how people thought about it. What also became very clear is that we do not yet have good enough communication channels to reach developers. And it's great that you're all here, so that we have one opportunity to talk and discuss. And this is not made easier by developers not always setting meaningful user agents. So if there's a problem in some of their requests, sometimes we can't figure out where they're coming from and then contact the developers. So if you have an application that uses data from Wikidata, it would be amazing if you set a good user agent so we know if we need to contact you in the worst case. And among the developers that we interviewed, it was amazing to see that many of them are actually giving back to Wikidata in some shape or form. So for example, fixing data issues that they stumble upon when they build their application, or adding missing data that is meaningful for their application, and so on. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily representative, though, unfortunately. So that's another thing we will try to push more, that developers who are building these applications see themselves as part of our community and can feel empowered to also contribute to Wikidata. And with that, I hand over to Ifra, who's going to talk a bit about the more specific insights.
Yes, thank you for sharing. So moving on to the Wikidata query service, like Lydia already said before, it's the most popular data access method that we have. It was used almost by everyone that we've interviewed and most of the survey participants. Something that's interesting is that a number of the queries that we saw, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more in detail, don't really need the full power of Sparkle as it is. For example, when getting labels of linked entities, and what we mean by labels of linked entities, for those who don't know, is usually when you ask for, let's say, an item, and then you get like the property, and the property is like P610, and instead of just getting that, because that's not human readable, you'd be able to get the label, which is highest point. Another thing that we thought was super interesting is that missing a real-time update is a big barrier to switching to third-party endpoints that are there. And it's not just about the fact that it's a couple of minutes or a few hours late. That is okay, but over more than that, like across days, is something that blocks people from shifting over. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how, when we sat down to put the queries, all of the queries that we have so far, into major buckets, like we call them, this is what we came up with. And we have to say that please don't take the numbers at face value. These are just made up numbers. What's more important to take away from here are the buckets that we've come up with. So generally, there's 4. There's simple queries, there's medium queries, there's complex queries, and there's queries of completely unknown complexity. And I'm not going to go through each one of them, but just as an example, a simple query could be one that's just requesting a label or a description or an alias from a singular entity. And medium queries could be ones that are trying to determine whether there's what the superclasses or subclasses are of an entity. Next slide. Okay, perfect. So what we then wanted to do was actually illustrate some of these. Again, this is more to show not this exact query is not right, but this is the general kind of blueprint of queries, which ideally shouldn't be run on the Wikidata query service. But for the reasons mentioned before by Lydia, people are using them. See, like on top is a very basic query that's asking for an item label in a specific language, which there is a possibility to do that with one of the APIs that are there. And the one below is a simple query that's asking for a statement or label, etc., of a property. Next slide, please. And the last one is asking for a list of items that meets a very basic like filtering criteria. So obviously the APIs could do this. It could be a few extra calls or so, but the possibility is there. All right, now moving on to data dumps. Data dumps could be an alternative to the query service in a few of the cases, obviously, but they're far too large. For some use cases, someone might not have the computational ability to use them, and they're not generated frequently enough for the use case that someone might have. And a request that came up quite often during the interviews were subset dumps, and we'll talk about that also later, but we're definitely trying to look into this now. Okay, so some fun basic numbers. We've been looking at the quantitative data on the APIs for the past year or so, and I just wanted to point out a few small things. So for the REST API specifically, over the last 3 months, there have been approximately 130 million requests. And this is amazing because as compared to a year ago, the API is getting 90 times as many requests. And we also released the first version in November. So this is really cool to see. And you can already see there's a very basic graph that I've added there. And you can see how there's an uptick over time. And the most used endpoints are get item, which is getting the entire item, followed by getting labels of an item and getting labels of a property. And then again, some simple numbers for the action API. Over the last 3 months, there have been approximately 3 to 4 billion requests to the action API. And the most used endpoints are query and parse and Wikibase get entities. And if you just filter them for just Wikibase specific endpoints, then obviously still on top is Wikibase get entities, but following that is Wikibase search entities and Wikibase format value. All right, what are we planning for next? Okay, so I split the different things into 3 stages of where we're at or what we're looking into. Already in development, on the top is search in the REST API. Like I showed before, search is the second highest endpoint that's used in Action API. And across the interviews and surveys, this was something that was asked for a lot. And we've already before sent, we did a proof of concept and got some feedback from the community and are trying to incorporate that. And our goal is that we would do the development also iteratively. So as soon as something is ready for testing, we're going to send it out to everyone, get feedback, improve, and so on. The next thing, as everyone knows, is the Wikidata query service graph split is in progress. I think the deadline for that, or it'll be done by the end of March or so is the plan. And embeddings for ML use, I'm not going to talk much about this because you should attend Philip's talk on Monday, where he's going to get into the details of this. What is ongoing? So like Lydia mentioned before, there is this very amazing developer portal that's there. And we're looking for more ways on making better communication channels between us and potential and current developers in and out of the community, so that the data that we have can be used to its maximum potential. And then there's a few things that I added there that are on the list for discovery because they came up multiple times, or there's just a big interest in them. On the top is alternatives to the simple and medium complexity queries, like the buckets that I'd shown before, such as the labels of linked entities or bulk get, just so we can see how we can make sure that there's other ways that the query service isn't overloaded, and that we can have more wholesome APIs that serve better use cases as well. And then another thing is we're looking into subset dumps. And the last thing that we're looking into is also scenario mapping for the Action API to see how we can improve things or how we can change a few things around. And that's why I'd also invite you to be there for the session on Friday, where we're just talking about how people have been using the Action API and what they'd expect from it in the future. All right, I would say that's it from my side. Are there any questions?
Yes, if there are any questions about what Lydia and Ifra just presented or about the event in general, feel free to write them in the chat. You could also, if you want, unmute your microphone and ask your question with your voice. You can also, if you have any question that comes to you later, write to me by email or on Telegram. Since I don't see any question coming yet, we can move on to the very last slide. And this is now the end of our opening session. Thank you very much for attending. What's going to happen now? We're going to take a little break, basically until 18 UTC, which is in roughly 20 minutes. So we can start again with the second session for today. Using Wikidata's data, come and ask your question. This is a very interactive session where basically we are welcoming your questions, your examples, your description of some issues that you may have had when trying to use some of the tools that have been mentioned by Lydia and Ifra, for example. So if you are watching us right now on YouTube, I strongly suggest you to join us on Jitsi instead, so you can interact with us. Again, you can find the link after signing up for the event on the wiki page. So I see that we have a question. Where do we see the works done so far on developer advocacy?
Yes. So one important piece is the developer portal, which is at on Wikidata at Wikidata:4developers, which has documentation and everything. And it also has a list of showcase applications to give people an idea of what others are doing with the data from Wikidata and maybe get some inspiration. We are also publishing blog posts where we, for example, interview a developer of an application and have them talk about why they're using data from Wikidata, how their application incorporates it, and so on, which is on the WMDE tech blog, which I will find a link in a few minutes for. Those are the main things so far. But if you have additional ideas around this, please let us know. Also, if you are developing a cool application that uses data from Wikidata and would like to have a blog post or similar, or if you would like to have it spread on Wikidata social media channels and so on, please do reach out and we can make that happen.
Thank you, Lydia. Do we have any more questions? All right. If you have more questions coming up later, you can always post them in the Jitsi chat. For now, I would say let's take a break. We have 15 minutes for a break, and then we will come back. Same link, same Jitsi link, same YouTube link. So stay tuned and see you in a couple of minutes. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I think we will start broadcasting again in a few seconds. So yeah, welcome back to day one of the Data Reuse Days 2025. If you are joining us here in the Jitsi room, great. That's excellent because this session is going to be very interactive. So you will be very welcome to unmute your microphone and also your camera if you want to. Just keep in mind that if you do so, you will appear on the recording of the session, which is not bad, but just so you know. And if you prefer, you can also write down your questions or comments in the chat of Jitsi. That is also a good option to interact with the participants. Now, if you are watching this from YouTube, that's totally fine, but you won't be really able to interact with the speakers or the participants during the session. So if it's not done yet, what I would encourage you to do is to join us on Jitsi. In order to do that, you simply need to go to the events page of the Data Reuse Days 2025 on Wikidata. You will find the event or register if it's not done yet. And from there, you will find the link to Jitsi, and you can just join us there so you can interact with us tonight for our second session. Now, this being said, I will to Lydia and Ifra, who will introduce us to this session.
Thank you, Leo. Yay! All right, everyone. Ifra and I are here to try to answer all your questions that you have around accessing data from Wikidata, working with Wikidata. Yeah. Ifra, do you have anything to add, or should we let people ask all the questions?
No, people can ask us all the questions. Also, this is also the place that you can complain if you want about something as well, or request something. All of the things goes. Ideally, you ask questions. They can be phrased as complaints. Anything works. We're open to it. So please just go ahead. And there's like no silly questions or so. We're just happy to have a chat.
Exactly.
Can you give maybe a few examples of topics that could be, or example of questions or issues that people could talk about?
You could, for example, ask about what's the best way to get a particular type of data for your application. Or I'm running into this error with the REST API. What does it mean? What do I do if I find an error in the data in Wikidata? But really, feel free to bring whatever floats your boat.
Or even if you just have an idea and have a use case in your head, and just talk about the use case, and then maybe we can see if at all we have things and what we could do about it, or point you in the right direction. And it doesn't need to be completely perfectly formed out idea. Or even if you just want to know where is the right place to ask the questions, where do I ask about the REST API and so on. Someone wants to talk?
Yes, it's me. It's Sarah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is this
Yes.
okay with my microphone? Okay. Yeah, so I am going to be the first to ask a question. So my question is a quite simple one. I just want to know, if you're a totally newbie to Wikidata, where should I start? What should I start with when, for example, I want to add some data and think, okay, because especially when I have nothing particular in my mind, like, okay, I don't know anything where I can start with, like for adding some data on a special organization or whatever. Or yeah, that's my question.
Excellent first question. Thank you, Sarah. So one of the things that's always helpful is if you have a rough idea of Wikidata, then one of the things you can do is look at similar entries to what you want to edit. So for example, if you're trying to add data about paintings, look at the Mona Lisa and similar famous paintings, because they tend to be well modeled and very built out. So there you have a good template you can follow. If you want to get a more basic introduction to how to edit Wikidata, then there are the Wikidata tours, which I, for example, linked from the main page. Thank you, Genoa, for the link. And of course, asking questions on Wikidata itself, on the project chat page, on Telegram in the Wikidata channel or the Wikidata help channel. There are for sure people who can help you with your first stumbling blocks. Now, if you are more interested in the data use side of it, then the developer portal at Wikidata for developers is your place to start. Excellent. Seems we answered Sarah's question. Any other questions or things you want to talk about? Oh, yes. Thank you for the links. Fred, do you want to read it out, the question? Or?
Yeah. So Wanderer is asking, how do I find all the wrong data and make it right?
That is a very good question. So there are many ways, but one thing that you can do, for example, is write a Sparkle query that finds you data that isn't quite right. So, for example, a Sparkle query that visualizes you stuff on a map, and you can see where the outliers are. Or you can query for something like the date of birth of a person is after their date of death. That might be right for time travelers, but most of the time it's probably wrong, and stuff like that. So depending on what kind of errors you're looking for, a query might be good. There's also recent changes and your watch list on Wikidata, where you can basically bookmark entries that are particularly important to you, and then see whenever something changes on them, and can keep an eye on that data. That's always very good. And then, of course, you can build your own system where you extract some data, store a local copy, and then next time you want to update the data, you can compare that data to your last one. That is one of the things, for example, KDE Itinerary does, which we will have a showcase on later in the data reuse days. There is the lifting system, which tries to determine is a particular edit likely to be bad or not, and you can see that in your watch list and recent changes as well. So to help you quickly spot potentially problematic edits based on a machine learning system. Yeah, those are just some of the things you can look at. And if you have a particular type of data or a particular type of applications, we can look at how specifically to help you keep an eye on the data that you are using.
Thank you, Lydia. I'm going to just read out the follow-up that was there, and then I'm going to ask Wanderer if it was sufficiently answered already by you or not, which was, can we do vandalism detection on our own systems or contribute to improve flagged data? You covered a little bit generically saying, yes, you can make copies and then edit and then put it back. And there are a bunch of tools or gadgets that are already there that are doing this, and you could help out in that case. They said, thank you. So I would consider that the question's been answered. I'm going to move on to the next question and read it out, which is from Danny. And they're asking, can you query for a list of items with particular constraints?
Right. You cannot at the moment, but that is something we are looking at for the coming year, so that you can, for example, easily query for items of humans that have a particular constraints violation and so on. Right now, unfortunately, it's not possible, and you can see the constraints reports, so to say, either if you look at the item itself, and then we'll have a little icon next to a problematic statement, Or alternatively, you can go to a properties talk page. So let's say you're interested in Project Gutenberg IDs, and then you can go to that property talk page, and there you will find a list of links that will send you to a list of items that violate that constraint. So it's not quite as powerful as full query capabilities for constraints, but you can get a list of items that violate a particular properties constraints if you are interested in a particular property and want to ensure that the data for that property is good.
Okay, Danny said, thank you. Their question's been answered. There's two other questions, but there was a follow-up from Wanderer that I'll get to first so that we don't lose track of the questions. And they were asking if it's okay, can I ask for examples? Maybe as a clarification, examples for the kinds of tools or gadgets that are used there, or would you mind writing in the chat to kind of detail what kind of examples you're looking for, perhaps? Yes, so they're asking for tools helping with vandalism detection. I think Lydia mentioned Liftwing, so I will write it out. That's how it's written, and at some point one of us can quickly dig through and maybe even find you a link. If that's okay, I can jump into the next question if I don't get another.
Maybe another thing that's especially relevant also for data reusers in a similar way, there's also the mismatch finder, which is a way to contribute back data quality issues that you find and that then editors can look through in the tool. I also shared a link to the Wikidata vandalism dashboard, which is an excellent tool if you, for example, a Wikipedia editor and want to keep an eye on some of the things that are especially relevant to your articles there in a particular language.
Amazing. They're saying, I think they have everything they need. There's no need to take any further. Amazing. Then I'm going to go back up and ask the next question, which was from LZ. And they were asking how to integrate Wikidata's data on a user-friendly website. Would you use the API or Snowman or something else?
I mean, there are so many ways. Snowman is certainly one really cool way. And we will have a session about Snowman, I believe, tomorrow at some point in the program, where Albin will introduce you to Snowman. But really, at the end of the day, it depends on what you want to build. If you want to build something like Gov directories, a mostly static website that presents data from Wikidata in a nice way, then something like Snowman is a great choice. You could also go with something like Scholia does, which is embedding live query results from the Wikidata query service. So they have a bunch of visualization embedded right from the Wikidata query service. But it really depends on the particular website you want to build, I would say.
They just answered saying they think it's more like Scholia with live queries. Awesome.
And Finn shared Sunya, which is in a similar direction. So yeah, that's also worth checking out.
Great. I hope that's been helpful. Before we move on to the next question, unless there's a follow-up from LZ. No. I saw a comment from Severin. Is there Scholia training? That's a question. I think from my side, as a very new, relatively new person to Wikidata, I'm going to say no. So I think the tool is available, and you can maybe reach out to the people that have built them, and they'd be happy to help out as far as I can tell. But Lydia?
Yeah, I don't think there's particular training about it.
All right. I'm going to quickly scroll up to find another question. There was a fairly similar question from Severin. I'm not sure. I apologize that we had missed that in all of the other talks that were going on, but similar to the question regarding the vandalism or regarding integration. While they answer that, they are talking about how can they enter data in a way that doesn't mess up the database. Like if I say this region is in Switzerland, and it's not appropriate for the 14th century and so on. Someone was kind enough to also share a link to how they're doing it right now. Did you get your answer, or are you looking for something else? And I don't know if they're happy with the answer that's been there so far. While they get back to us, I will get to another question from Ranjit. And the question is, before I go to the next one, Shavrin just responded saying, well, will the data still show up for Switzerland in general?
Like the data you put in, you should be careful to model it in the correct way. And I say the correct way in quotes because there are usually several ways to model something in Wikidata, and there are community conventions to decide on a particular way. So always check what other famous similar things look like, how they're modeled, and you're most often on the safe side. And in general, if you're importing data, please do keep an eye on constraints violations, for example. Keep an eye on your talk page if someone is sending you a message that was something you were doing was not quite right, things like that. And start small, right? Like don't do an import of a gazillion new data points right away. Start small, see how it works on a smaller scale, and then build up from there. There's time.
Amazing. It seems like their question is also answered. There was a question from Ranjit, and they were asking, any plan to switch to the new theme in Wikidata?
Yes. So I assume you mean Vector 2022 as the theme. And that is already available on Wikidata, so you can switch to it in your preferences. But for non-logged-in users, it will come in the next month. So we've been working with the team at the foundation to fix a few remaining issues there. But it will come this year, hopefully sooner than later. More info will follow as we have specific dates.
Okay, they said amazing. There's a question from Zara, and they're asking, are there limits in the area of data queries? How much data can be queried? Are there technical limits?
There totally are.
Yes.
Do you want to refer or should I?
I mean, I can just do the very basic, and I would say yes. Obviously, this is also an issue that a lot of people have already brought up before, that the query service is timing out. often because there is a lot of data that's there. I think there's so much, there's different parts of it, right? Like how much of the graph you're traversing versus also how much of the data you're asking for. So there's two things, and they both have obviously their limits. And this is why the graph split is in the works, and why we're trying to have the other data access methods kind of be more focused on specific use cases, especially like the simple queries and the medium queries that I showed examples of, which are better served in different data access methods. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do to not have these problems. So there's obviously that there can be more infrastructure that we can have, but there's also the thing of using the data access methods in the best way possible for the use that they're there for. And I think there's these different kind of methods that we're trying to get to it from. Don't know if that helps, Lydia.
Yeah. And maybe in addition, so specifically for the Wikidata query service, your query has to finish in 60 seconds or less. And of course, if your query is very complex, then it will potentially take longer, but then it gets cut off by the server. There are ways to optimize your query to get under the 60 seconds execution time if it's not a very heavy analytical query where you need to look at basically everything. There is a page on Wikidata called Wikidata:/request a query, where people are happy to help you write the Sparkle queries and also optimize existing Sparkle queries if you're hitting the limit, assuming it is something that the query service is actually able to do within a 60 seconds limit. The other limit that is in place is, for example, you cannot send too many queries at the same time. At some point, that will be limited. Yeah. Maybe that's another thing. Even if query.wikidata.org doesn't let you run Sparkle queries that are longer than 60 seconds or not too many concurrently, there are other options you have. For example, setting up your own query service or using one of the other ones that are out there. Like setting up your own query service is not trivial, but if you're technically skilled, you can do it yourself. And there are also a few people in the community who run their own query service that could help you as well, if it's reasonable. Do we have more questions?
Not so far, but Sarah is saying thank you for the answer. More questions like these, or even completely different from the ones that we've heard so far? We have a new question, and it is, are there any plans for opening up the programmatic access to the Commons query service so you can query Commons data from JavaScript?
Yeah. There is a session on next Tuesday, I believe, with David, Guillaume, and me talking about Wikidata query service things. It would be an amazing question to ask the two guys there. But long story short, it is completely in limbo right now, and some people are definitely saying like open it up without it being more open. People can't build applications on top of it, and that kind of makes it useless. But at the same time, there's a worry that the system is overloaded, and I don't know what the latest thoughts by the team there are. Yes, if I looked up, it's on the 25th at 17 UTC. But yeah, I would love for that to be opened up as well. But I also feel the pain of the team. All right, more questions.
We have another one. And the question is, any updates about Wikidata Bridge, updating data from Wikipedia?
Yes. So for those who don't know, the Wikidata Bridge, it's a project and an extension that makes it possible to edit Wikidata directly from Wikipedia or another Wikimedia project, so that editors on those other projects don't need to go to Wikidata to update data that shows up in your Wikipedia article, for example. And this is a pretty important project. And there is now, since last year, no, a bit longer, I think, a team that Danny, who is here, is, for example, on, that is specifically looking into how to make the integration between Wikidata and the other Wikimedia projects tighter and support them more. So the Wikidata Bridge, for example, falls into the purview of that team. However, that team is not going to look at the Wikidata Bridge right now because, for example, improving recent changes integration and watchlist integration seems to be quite a bit more important for them to fix first. But the bridge is not forgotten. It's very close to my heart. But yeah, not right now, because other things first before we can get to it.
Okay, seems like they have their answer for the moment. I'm going to move on to the next question. And the question is, since this is a data reuse gathering, do you have any tips for convincing institutions to reuse / round-trip Wikidata item QIDs and data?
Yeah, that is the magical question. So we have a lot of conversations with people and institutions and organizations who are using data from Wikidata. And with some of them, it's very easy to help them understand that they have to give back somehow to make sure that the data they're using in their application is actually pretty good. But especially in larger organizations, you talk to one enthusiastic person and then they go talk to their boss or their coworker and so on. And that's when it gets more difficult for them to justify contributing back. I think what I've seen work is really giving the people who are enthusiastic about Wikidata and understand it, giving them the right material, arguments, and so on, to be able to be a good internal advocate for that. But it's hard. And if anyone else has good experiences that they've had in the past, please do share. We haven't completely cracked this yet, let's say.
I think I can just add another thing, which is that obviously another big part of that would be having these kind of access methods that are there, right? Like that will allow them to be able to do this and not just like one thing that has such a high barrier to entry or so, where people just turn back because they're unsure of the time commitment, or they're unsure whether they have the capabilities internally to be able to do that, and whether they would have support from here or the community or so on and so forth to help them get there. And these are the kind of things that are within our control that we're trying to get to. The data itself is obviously pretty amazing, and the work that's done there, but these are the small things, or the dots that we can at least help with convincing. I'm going to see if there was... Amazing. I'm going to go back up to the top. And there was a question that reads, we'll see several examples of data reuse projects in other sessions, but does anyone have any other examples of Wikidata reuse projects that they consider to have especially high impact?
While everyone is thinking, you can have a look, for example, at the showcase page on the developer portal. Those are not necessarily selected for highest impact, but more for showing the different things you can do with Wikidata's data to get people inspired. But that might be a place. Also, if you have a cool application that you want listed there, let's talk.
Does that seem okay? They seem satisfied, and I'm letting also people share their own versus us talk about the ones that we think so. So I think that's great. Keep the links coming in. I will scroll down to the next question. There's a link to a GitHub page, and they're asking any plans to work on this. It's now broken, and the link is for, from what I can read from the GitHub page, for Wikidata edit framework for JavaScript.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that's the tool that was developed on Russian Wikipedia, similar to the Wikidata Bridge, kind of a predecessor to the Bridge. Since that is entirely community maintained there on Russian Wikipedia, I don't think this is something that the team at Wikimedia Deutschland will work on. But it's a cool tool, and if anyone would like to support them, please do.
Okay, I will scroll on and try to see what was next right after. There's a question to me. Ifra mentioned that the API was launched in November, but I'm sure I have been using one for longer. Is there more than one, or was it just a new version? No, so I just meant to say that the REST API in version 0, like we called it, has been there since like the beginning of 2023. But we always said that that was an unstable version. So we released a stable version 1 in November with all of the functionality for getting and editing for items and properties. And the error messages are as perfect as we could make them. You can rely on the workings and things like that. So there's nothing, yeah, that's basically what I meant with the fact that there was version 1, but it's the same. It's still the REST API. That was the...
And there are many APIs. And if you want to find a path through the jungle, come to the session tomorrow, which gives an overview of all the different APIs and other ways you can get to the data.
Amazing. I think after that, everyone's just very kindly sharing their favorite projects that I've been using Wikidata's data. Okay, are there more questions? Maybe we wait another minute or so.
And also, if people have questions after this session, there is now also a specific support page for developers on the developer portal. So feel free to post there as well if you run into issues with accessing Wikidata's data. All right. Since there don't seem to be more questions, and Harry is plugging Lexica, for example, which is a very cool tool to contribute lexicographical data to Wikidata. Everyone else here, if you have something cool you're working on, please do share. This is your time to brag.
There's a comment, not a question, just a comment where they're saying, I'm wondering if the Wikidata community could have a dedicated team, even volunteers in brackets, to immediately step on developer issues concerning Wikidata, in brackets, something like the Wikimedia Hackathon group. Just they're saying it's kind of a wild thought, but they just wanted to share.
I mean, why not? That getting support page I linked on the developer portal. Please do feel free to help people out there. Also on the Wikidata Telegram channel, people, if you have developer-related issues, please feel free to post there as well. And if it becomes too much, we can open a dedicated channel at some point. But right now, I don't think we should split it just yet. Yeah. Oh, yes. Ranjit is sharing the Everything is Connected game that Denny developed some years ago. And that, Ranjit, was it you who redeveloped it recently? Nice. Cool, yes. That is a cool game where you can develop your own levels. So if you want to build some tricky levels for the game sessions that we have coming up during the data reuse days, you can build a level to prepare for it, and we can play it there. And for technical discussions, Leah also linked to the Wikidata Tech mailing list, which is also a place where you could ask questions if you want. All right. Oh, and Finn made a new audio game that we can also play called Guess Form from Text. Ooh, that sounds like lexicographical data. Very cool. So yeah, people go and play all the games and give feedback. And then we have a Stadtland Wikidata game from Manjit. Nice. All right. Then I think it is time to wrap up the first day of the data reuse days. Leah, do you want to briefly talk about what's coming tomorrow?
Absolutely. So tomorrow is the day that is ideal for newcomers, people who are not yet familiar with building applications with Wikidata's data, because let me just share my screen so I can show you the program again. Because we're going to have the how to use Wikidata's data introduction session, in which Lydia and Ifra will show us all the different tools that you can use to query and retrieve Wikidata's data. So we're going to talk APIs, we're going to talk query service, we're going to talk dumps, we're going to talk a lot of different things. So make sure to show up or catch up with the replay later. And then in the second part, we will have a practical example on how to build a Wikidata-based website from scratch using the framework called Snowman. And that's going to be with Albin, who's been doing a lot of things around Wikidata. So feel free to join us tomorrow. For people joining on Jitsi, it is the exact same link. And for people joining on YouTube, you will find your new link here directly from the program page. So I think in that case, that's all for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Lydia and Ifra, for answering all the questions. And see you very soon for the upcoming days of the Data Reuse Days.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.